have a hot mic?
Well, how are you doing, Carl?
Bar conversations.
I think we'll go ahead and call the December 2nd meeting of the Planning Commission to order. I'd like to encourage all of you to stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item is an opportunity for any of the commission to call attention to things that they've observed in the city or in the areas around where they live that they want to have some pride in or call attention to. So is there any celebrations or accomplishments today? And we all get really busy with this holiday season coming on. The only thing I can think of is that of all of the, I think I'll say that, of all of the downtown lighting ceremonies that we've had over the last 15 or so years, I think this last one was really probably as nice as anything. The weather was perfect and got a lot of people downtown, so I was happy to see that. So, yeah, all right. If there aren't any more, let's go ahead and continue on with the consent agenda. 4.1 is the approval of the summary minutes of November 4th regular meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move we approve the minutes as printed.
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask all in favor to say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. 5.1 is public hearing. Application PDD 14-1/1A, filed by Gravity Works Architecture on behalf of the City of Salina, requesting approval of a zoning change from I-2 Light Industrial District to a PDD Plan Development District, and the approval of a preliminary site development plan for proposed building additions to Fire Station Number 1. I'm not going to go on with all the rest of the...
You don't want to read the legal description?
That's all right. I think we all know what we're talking about.
Well,
I have a staff report.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, this is going to be a tag team effort between myself and Mr. Hers. Mr. Hers is doing double duty as our graphics person, but I'm going to just give you a little bit of background and the reason for why this particular approach was taken, and then Mr. Hers will give you some more details about the public use district and how this project relates to that. But the first thing we'll do is ask members of the commission how many knew that the Fire Station Number 1 is the former site of Longfellow Elementary School. But this was the original site of Longfellow Elementary School. It was demolished, and then the property was deeded from the school district over to the City of Salina and became the site of Fire Station Number 1. This building was designed by Charles Shaver, and he is the architect who designed Memorial Hall and Oakdale School and some other notable structures in the community. It was constructed by Busboom and Rao contractors, and if you look at the clock, the lettering style, all these are very typical of the architecture of that decade. The fire station has a current footprint of 10,042 square feet. It has an administrative office area, upstairs living quarters for firefighters, and there are 4 vehicle bays with overhead doors facing Elm Street. It opened for occupancy October 15th, 1950. The original lot it occupied was squarish, 250 feet wide by 170 feet deep. Then in 1997, the city purchased 4 existing structures in the lots along North 7th Street, directly north of the fire station, and this was done to accommodate construction of a fire department training facility, which is directly north of station number 1. And so this added lots 13, 14, and 15, and 16 to the site. That training facility was completed in 1998. Back in 2008, when the capital improvement program was being developed, there was a allocation there to remodel and expand the administrative office wing of Fire Station number 1 due to its age and congestion in the administration area. In 2012, construction bids were awarded for this remodeling project, and that remodeling is basically complete. The idea was to allow Fire Station number 1 to continue to function as the fire operation headquarters, but to update it and provide adequate space for the next 50 to 60 years. We just wanted to note that Fire Station number 1 is designated as a conservation district property, which means it's protected from demolition without review by the Heritage Commission. However, alterations, additions are not a factor in that. They are not subject to review by the Heritage Commission. Back in October, we met with David Stewart of Gravity Works Architecture regarding the proposed addition of 2 additional emergency vehicle bays and the potential addition of a storage building. Dustin, if you want to point that out, for storage of trailers that are currently stored on the site. We reviewed the plans for adding new bays onto the west side of the existing fire station building. We determined that the addition would extend an additional 60 feet or to within 4 inches of the west property line. And then up at the north on 7th Street, we determined that the trailer storage building would be located within 5 feet of the 7th Street property line. So we laid out a number of options, which you see there on page 3. One was to retain the I-2 zoning and send this to the Board of Zoning Appeals to address variances. One was to apply to change the zoning to public use district, but also let the Board of Zoning Appeals address front yard setback variances. One option was to expand or extend the C4 zoning, which is what the city-county building is zoned, and extend that to the fire department site. That allows 0 front yard setbacks. Fourth option was to apply to create a planned development district for the site. And so the option 4 was what was selected, and the primary reason was that public use zoning certainly fits this property better than the current I-2 zoning. The other rationale is that planned development district allowed for public review and input into the plan and involves the Planning Commission and City Commission in the property. So certainly you would probably agree that while there are industrial uses in the vicinity, this is not an industrial use. It doesn't function as an industrial property. So the public use designation more closely fits the ownership and use of the property. And what we discussed a little bit in our study session, but would reemphasize here, the 2 main differences between an application for public use zoning and a planned development district is that the planned development district allows you to create a customized zoning district for a property. You can look at lot size, you can look at building setback, you can look at density limitations, and it allows applicants to request and you to approve deviations and exceptions to standard zoning requirements. It also allows you to attach conditions of approval, which you can't do in an ordinary zoning case. The other thing that's different is that the PDD process requires that the applicant submit a specific site plan with the requested zoning change, and that allows you to review that plan and address any concerns you have about number and location or type of buildings, surfacing of driving aisles and parking areas, site drainage, landscaping, things of that nature. So this request is to rezone the property to a planned development district with public use, public facilities zoning. The public use aspect of this better fits the use of the property. The PDD allows for some flexibility from a construction standpoint. And because the standard public use district has a 25-foot setback requirement along 8th and along 7th, as part of this application, the applicant's requesting an exception to those setback requirements. And so if we look at this area, historically back in 1977, a large swath of property from Elm Street north to the railroad tracks was zoned I-2, and that is more a reflection of the historic use of the property. And we have Air Gas, we have Watson Electric, we have New Jerusalem Missionary Baptist Church as surrounding uses, and then to the south we have the City County Building and Public Library. And so I'm going to let Dustin, as we essentially get to page 5 of the report, just kind of summarize for you the standards for development in a public use district and how this application lines up with that. And then on page 9 at the top is a request or an itemization of the modifications that are being requested as part of the planned development district. So Dustin, if you want to go over some of the public use district requirements and summarize for the commission the modifications that are being requested on page 9, I'll turn that over to Dustin.
Thank you, Dean. As Dean mentioned, this is a planned development district application, and with all planned development district applications, we have a standardized underlying zoning attached to it. In this particular case, the applicant is proposing a public use district, and the intent of the public use district is to accommodate the many public services and governmental activities and facilities that the public needs to function. And there are 3 major principles and purposes involved in that, with one being to provide a suitable location for government and educational facilities, to accommodate the unique operational needs of public buildings, facilities, and uses, which are controlled and owned by the public, and 3, to ensure that sufficient land area, open space, buffering, and access control be provided by public uses to minimize potential adverse impacts on all those neighboring properties. So when we look at the regulations in that public use district, we do see that fire stations are a permitted use. And as we go through and look at all of the bulk regulations and other requirements, such as minimum lot area, lot width, lot depth, structure height, and front yard requirements, lot coverage, site coverage, landscape area, and parking, we will note that the only thing that the fire station is lacking with the proposed addition would be the requirement for a front yard setback of 25 feet along along 8th Street here, as well as a 25-foot setback along 7th Street here for the proposed trailer covered trailer storage building. And which really takes us to the top of page 9. And so that's the purpose of the PDD, is we have a proposed addition that's a little over 4,000 square feet that is going to encroach into the front yard setback along 8th. We have a proposed storage building for trailers that encroaches the front yard setback on 7th. And then we also have an existing sign, which I'll show you in this photograph here. That's an awning sign that is a little over 70 square feet and exceeds the 32 square foot maximum in the public use district. And also a proposed sign, and this was just brought to our attention today because we missed it, but the applicant showed us this earlier.
That's on that west elevation.
Oh, one more. Did I miss it? Okay. It's very difficult to make out, but there is a sign being located about where you see my cursor on the west elevation that staff initially missed as we were going through our staff report. So to summarize, the modifications that are being requested are essentially a variance for the front yard setback along 8th Street, the front yard setback along 7th Street, and then also two proposed signs, one that's existing and one that's proposed that would exceed the 32 square foot maximums allowed in the public use district. In looking at the suitability of the site and the development under the existing zoning, it is zoned I-2. As Mr. Andrew noted, the interesting thing about the I-2 in this particular area is that I-2 is probably the zoning that's most appropriate for everything around it, and this particular property is probably more in line with other public facilities on the south side of Elm rather than the surrounding properties on the north side of Elm. On the south side of Elm, you have the public library as well as the city-county building, which we are in right now, which do function as public buildings, even though they are zoned with a C4 downtown district zoning classification. The fire station has been in service and serving the central part of the community for over 60 years, so it's well entrenched in this location, and the whole fire system is developed around this as the headquarters, where when a fire is identified and emergency services are required, there is a specific response that takes place from a fire station that's in that area. So there's 4 fire stations. They all have their geographic areas on where they respond to. And so in the network that the city of Salina has, the north central portion is covered by this fire station here. Character of the neighborhood, we've kind of discussed that already. Public utilities and services are adequate. There is already water and sewer that is served for this facility, and no additional water or sewer is going to be required. There's adequate storm drainage for the facility. In conformance with the comprehensive plan, the future land use plan of the City of Salina's comprehensive plan does show this area being part of the public, semi-public land use area, which is fitting for a public use district that's such as is being proposed. So in reviewing a PDD and site plan, generally there's 2 phases or 2 steps to that take place, where we look at a preliminary PDD which deals with the site plan aspect of the project. However, when you have a single parcel of land and a combined preliminary and final PDD may be approved, eliminating the need for a second step. So really what we're dealing with here today is we're looking at the plan that's being proposed, meaning the site plan itself, as well as the exceptions that are being proposed as part of the planned development district, and we're looking at them in tandem and in conjunction together, and looking at whether or not this is an acceptable location for the site plan and the amended PDD exceptions that are being proposed as part of the planned development district. Again, the aspect of the site plan that's being proposed that is going to be incorporated into the PDD and the final development plan would be a 4,900 square foot addition directly to the west that would go essentially to the property line on 8th Street, a 30 by 60 storage building for trailers at the northeast corner of the property, 5 feet off of the 7th Street frontage and 7 feet off of the north property line. And then the two signs that were discussed earlier, and the replacement of this gray area. So this gray area is pavement that is going to be replaced and modified. The site development data, the property is a little over 1.5 acres, right around 1.5 acres. The building area, including the existing structures, being the training building and the storage shed that's in the northeast corner or northwest corner, and then the new proposed trailer shed in the northeast corner, all come out to 18,959 square feet, so a tad under 19,000 square feet. And that lot coverage is 28.7, which is under the 50% maximum that's allowed in the public use district. The surfacing of drives is right at 50.3%, and the landscaping open space is currently 21%, and the minimum in the public use district is 20. So there isn't a whole lot of landscape area. Most of it happens to be along the 7th Street frontage, where you see these tree symbols. And here you can see in the aerial photo a little bit better. That's the extent of the landscaping that is currently on the site. The building orientation is an east-west orientation, and if you want to look at the facade, we do have a couple of renderings here. You'll note that the existing facade is a brick facade, and it appears from the drawings that will be continued to the property line and all the way around for the addition. And so the addition you see is on the screen here, and it's the area west of the tower when you're looking at it from the elevation viewpoint. Parking is an interesting aspect of this project because there were 44 stalls, 19 stalls were removed, which leaves us with 25. Now that sounds like a lot of stalls have been removed, and that's true. However, based on the strict application of the parking regulations, only 24 are required. And that number is concluded or calculated by looking at the number of beds that the firefighters have to sleep in, which is 21, and then looking at the amount of office space for administrative staff that are located within this building facility. And that comes out to 24 total. We have 25 that are going to be retained, which looks like we have a surplus of 1. Now, from a practical standpoint, I will mention that there are issues with fire stations because they are 24-hour a day kind of operation where they're manned by staffs. So when you have a staff change, you're going to have double the people there for a given amount of time, while some people are coming and others are leaving. And so parking is always an issue with fire stations. And although the proposed plan does propose enough parking that meets the minimum regulations, from a functional and practical standpoint, and there are some challenges there from when looking at the parking. Signage, as I've talked about a while ago when we looked at the front elevation here, there is an existing sign that is currently been permitted. In the I-2 district, there's enough allowable sign area to allow for this awning sign that you see in the picture. However, if the zoning were to change, 32 square feet is the maximum in the public use district, and this sign would become non-conforming unless it were incorporated into the planned development district. The same could be said for the sign that was proposed on the west end, and it's my understanding that even though it will be a new sign, It's actually a refurbishing of an old sign that used to be there at one point in time that the fire department had, and they're looking to have it refurbished and then reinstalled along that west face. So that would be something to look at and incorporate into the Plan Development District. Landscaping, public use districts require that at least 20% of the total site be dedicated to landscaping. In addition to that, the landscape regulations require that a certain amount of front yard landscaping be dedicated towards landscaping. And in this particular case, if the fire station were a new development, that number would be 8,116 square feet. Well, currently, in the southeast corner of the property where you see the green space in the aerial photograph, there is 3,875 square feet. So it does fall short of the required landscaping for new development. However, this is a redevelopment, which means the zoning administrator has the authority to look at the site and, based on the hardships of existing infrastructure and where there is landscaping currently and where there is the potential of adding landscaping, he can grant relief from the strict application of the front yard landscaping. So we do have a number of findings of fact that are in your packet on page 14 that you can look at, and staff has identified. Staff would recommend approval of the creation of the Plan Development District for this 1.5 acre site upon those findings, including any deviations to the public use district development standards that have been justified by the applicant, subject to the following conditions and any additional conditions the Planning Commission deems appropriate. So, 1, we have development and use of the fire station, number 1 site shall be limited and shall be subject to the bulk regulations and limitations and sign regulations applicable to the public use district, except for enumerated in section 2. And number 2 is exceptions and modifications requested. And in addition to the A, B, and C, the 3 that are listed there, a D should probably be added if the Planning Commission wants to add the proposed sign on the west facade. That would state an increase in allowable sign area for a second wall sign from 32 square feet to 100 square feet to ensure that the proposed wall sign does not become nonconforming with the proposed zoning change. So that would be a 4th modification or exception that the Planning Commission can look at. And then number 3, development of fire station number 1 shall be completed in accordance with the approved site plan, and that's a standard condition that we have for most plan development districts. So with that said, staff has identified the following additional alternatives the Planning Commission could have. You can recommend approval of the PDD. You could postpone consideration, or you could recommend denial. Those would be the 3 potential outcomes that staff has identified as far as alternatives that you could recommend. With that, staff will take any questions that the Commission may have.
Any questions for staff?
One.
Mr. Kennedy?
I think the city owns a parking lot across the street to the west of the proposed addition. Is that true?
That's owned by the Salina Public Library, which is a separate entity from the city of Salina.
And you answered my question.
That is a lot for primarily for their employees, and we looked into that, and it is full on a daily basis, and didn't seem like that provided any options for supplemental parking.
Yeah, that's why I asked that's going to be my question, but you answered it. Thank you.
So I had a question also. I drove by yesterday and was looking at the training building back behind to the north of the existing fire station. And what I can't recall, and maybe you can bring that picture up. So there is that plantable green space there in front of that to the east of the training building?
Yes, that could be used. I don't know how that area functions or how that serves a
I don't
purpose
either.
for the fire department and how
Right.
they use that space with their
Right.
tactical training, but it isn't covered by any other infrastructure at the moment.
Right. As I looked at the overall appearance of the place, and that's consideration, I would be curious about whether, and there are any comments about that from the architect or otherwise, but even though we could allow the existing landscaping to go ahead, I would, if possible, like to see a little bit more landscaping, not perhaps up to the maximum, but that seemed like an area, the only area that I see where that might be permissible, or feasible, I guess I should say.
Any other questions for staff? We'll hear from the applicant. Thank you. Please come up and give your name for the record, please.
Thank you. I'm David Stewart with Gravity Works Architecture out of El Dorado, Kansas. Mr. Chairman, Planning Commission, city staff, certainly want to thank you for the opportunity to come before you. Our request, in fact, I'm pretty sure that's the most comprehensive review of a project, both from this side of the podium in my experience and from your side of the podium in my Planning Commission experience. So I'm confident that I'm not going to be able to add anything to that description. Certainly, the interest of the project moving forward is reliant upon getting away from the I-2 zoning for this property. It is not allowed to be expanded as a non-conforming use in that zoning. So that was our first and foremost goal for this zoning. Certainly the public use, public facility designation, as outlined in the city's long-range plan for that site, is well in line. And during the development review team meeting, it became quite clear that that this would be the most direct and certainly the process with the most integrity moving forward, so that the city wasn't seen in any way, shape, or form as giving favor to themselves in this endeavor. So, with that, any questions I can address for you specifically?
I have just one and then a comment. I do appreciate your efforts to keep the architectural design consistent with the original building. I think in another 50 years we'll be even more thrilled that Mr. Schaefer designed some of these buildings here in Salina.
I agree.
Having said that, curious what the purpose of the west-mounted sign really is?
The purpose, the existing administration, fire department, they've been storing an original porcelain. It's actually a series of letters that were originally mounted on the building, maybe even at origin. I'm not sure. I've seen the original drawings. I don't know if those letters are indicated there, but they specifically spell out in individual letters Salina Fire Station Number 1, I believe. I've seen them firsthand. They are serviceable, and it really is just a goal of the fire department to be able to put that original signage back into service, and they felt like the west elevation was the best and most appropriate way and place to do that. So it's certainly not an absolute requirement. It's just in keeping with the character of the original building.
I'm going to redirect the question then to Dean just a little bit. Did I hear you say in the staff report that this was designated as a conservation or historic building?
It is what we call a heritage conservation property. If you've been following the news, the former St. John's Hospital is also a heritage conservation property. It means that in 1985, there was a historic resources survey done of the community, and there were 200-some individual properties that said these are either historically, culturally, or architecturally significant, and they should be protected from demolition without a public review. And so this is one of those on the list. It is only protected from the demolition side, not from the alteration or addition side, but certainly we also appreciate the fact that the addition seems to honor the original architecture of the building.
And I was just trying to, in my mind, formulate some idea about whether or not these artifacts of an original sign have some value beyond.
Right. Certainly, we could research that. I imagine if we searched and also got Mr. Berger's involvement, we may even produce a photograph with that sign mounted on the west side of the building.
Right.
There was some of that done at the fire station on Santa Fe as well. There were some artifacts that were discovered that were reintroduced to the fire station on South Santa Fe Station 2 when that was added on to.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions of the applicant? Anyone?
Yeah, frankly, I like the sign that you're proposing, but you can see it a little better in our packet, and it looks kind of cool, frankly, to put it back on there. So I think it has some merit. To expand on Jerry's comment in regard to the architectural, I know the doors have to be higher in this new addition, no question about it, because the others are really low, and that's old school. But
Correct.
When it's completed, there was a recent addition just put on the east end, the east end of the building, and frankly, unless you knew it was added on, you couldn't see it. Mm-hmm. Will this look the same? I mean, it'll have the same color brick as the original. The banding will be the same type of concrete or masonry work, et cetera. Is that
correct? There's also an alternating offset coursing in a particular band that actually utilizes not only about a half-inch or 3/4-inch offset in that brick, but it also utilizes slightly and subtly different tones and colors of brick within that detailing. Yes, it's very much our intention to mimic that coming through. We'll use architectural cast stone to create some of the bands that you see coming across. We've tried to replicate, we have replicated the height of the parapet from the east two-story portion into the new apparatus bays. As you can see from the apparatus bay doors, they will be parking taller equipment in these two bays. But likewise, pretty much between the original hose tower and that first new apparatus bay door, that area as it serves to connect some of the second floor space from the existing building to the new. They will actually have some high angle training space in there, so the additional volume inside of that space will be beneficial for training as well. And we felt like keeping that form consistent coming around that west face was important, even though it is obviously broken up by the hose tower. We've also kept the same face depth essentially. Within less than a foot of the south face of the new addition compared to generally the south face of the existing portion to the west for those reasons.
good? The elevations here look pretty good, but they're black and white, and it's a little hard to see the.
Certainly understand.
Thank you.
Other questions of the applicant? Thank you very. Oh, go ahead.
How serious is the parking problem? You said it is a challenge.
The fire chief has relayed to us that they certainly acknowledge and appreciate that they're relying on parking along the street to accomplish what they need to do. They would like to get, really for security reasons, they'd like to get as many of their staff vehicles off of the street and on site, but right now they appreciate and understand that that's not possible, and the apparatus bay addition is critical to their long-term mission. I do believe that they intend to look at options to try to overcome that, but not as part of our scope at this time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. If there are any members of the public who would like to address this issue, please don't hesitate to come forward and give your name. Not seeing any, I'll bring it back up to the commission for discussion and future action. Questions, comments, anyone?
I guess I would like to go ahead and make a motion that we approve application PDD 14-1/1A, and subject to the conditions that are listed in our packet on page 14 to 15, and inclusive of the one that Mr. Hers suggested, number D, to include from 32 to 100 square feet signage area, that exemption to allow placement of that sign. And just one other non-binding part of the motion, to work with the fire station personnel to see if additional landscaping can be utilized around the construction.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I hope it doesn't die for lack of a second. Me too. I'll second it. I mean, I was waiting, but
I used to be the second man, but
I know.
here I don't usually second motions. There's been a motion and a second to approve PDD 14-1. Any discussion before we call a vote? The only comment that I have at this point is that I was asking about the necessity or the purpose of the sign because it's not unusual for many PDD applicants to come before us and want more sign. And it was going to be even harder for me if they said, well, we just need another sign so people see us better, because, again, that doesn't distinguish this request from others. But when I find out that this lettering appears to be vintage from the original, I have absolutely no problem distinguishing this application from the next one, who's also going to want a second sign. So I intend to support your
And
motion.
just to clarify, they are allowed to have two signs. They're allowed to have a west-facing sign in addition to the south-facing sign. It's a matter of the square footage, the public
size,
use district,
okay.
and the fact that Elm is not a collector or arterial street is what limits them to 32 square feet. So you're not approving the second sign so much as you're approving the size of the two
second
signs.
Okay.
Right.
The comments still, I think, are pretty much in
Yeah.
keeping.
good point, Jerry.
All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
For the benefit of Mr. Stewart, the plan is, this is a recommendation from the Planning Commission. The ordinance zoning change would go before the City Commission on the 22nd of December, which is a Monday. And so we'll put together the minutes and a summary of this recommendation, and that will go to the City Commission for their action on the 22nd of December.
I think it's pretty positive. Didn't I read where the city commission approved the concept of the project at their recent meeting? Isn't that correct?
I think they approved, they've approved a construction manager at risk. They've approved the architect for the design. They have not actually bid the
Right.
project or
Great.
approved these aspects of it, which is, this approval would be essential to move forward
Right.
with this design.
Any other matters to come before this group?
We will meet on the 16th. We have 2 conditional use permit applications, and then I discussed, I think, with Barb and Joan that we have 2 applications that relate to the comprehensive plan, but they relate to maps that support the comprehensive plan. There's a figure 2-7, which is the major street map, and we're going to try to turn that into a functional street classification map. In other words, the major street map just has the major streets, but it doesn't deal with streets like Roach or Quincy or Front Street, or a lot of those. Our functional classification map should have every single street that's in the city and assign it a classification as arterial collector or local. And so we'll be bringing that to you. And then work that's been done on a bicycle on-street route map and off-street trail map to get those together. They would substitute for figure 2-10 or map 210 in the comprehensive plan. That those are kind of placeholder maps, and with the idea that we would do additional work. So those will also be on your agenda for the 16th.
Dean, we talked briefly in the study session about the comprehensive plan, and we've talked about before. I don't find the maps in the comprehensive plan that we have to be of a quality that makes them real easy to distinguish what's going on. And do we have, and those maps are very helpful to us in trying to determine how this particular zoning fits in the concept of the comprehensive plan. Are there better quality maps available than what's in that particular book that was shared with us, or not?
What we are working on is that we have, last year, the City Commission and Planning Commission approved a substitute future land use map, which is of superior quality, and we can make sure that you've got your meeting notebooks there. We can make sure that a hard copy of that gets placed in there, and we'll try to use it more for packet and display purposes, but we've done that, and that is also the goal with the major street map and the bicycle. Those are very conceptual, what I would call almost placeholder maps, and so what staff's trying to do is take those maps that are in the comp plan document and make them much more detailed so they're more user-friendly and useful, because when you're dealing with a specific parcel or specific area, you need a more detailed map than what is in that document. So that's what we're working towards.
Thanks.
That's, we'll have some business for you on the 16th, but that's all we have for you this evening.
This meeting is adjourned.
Up next, a traditional work for the holidays, Home for Christmas. Lieutenant Colonel Lowell E. Graham directs the United States Air Force Band of the Golden Gate.